building. The thing that we see all those big creators like Grian, Scar and SmallishBeans doing that we wish we could do ourselves. And for some of us, it's a little bit harder than others. Today I'm going to be showing you some building tips that could really help up your building game in Minecraft. So my first tip is making sure you always plan your builds. It may seem a little bit typical, but it's a really important thing that most people forget to do. So the main thing you can do is just pick out a block palette. So say you wanted this to be like your main walls, and then for your roof you might want something like this. So to plan a build, you don't even need to build the full thing. You can just try and get a sense of what you want the build to look like and just do a little bit of a wall, maybe like plan out the shape that you're going to build in. Working in creative is so much easier as it means you can just change stuff around, fly around, and it's just so much easier to build in creative than it is in survival. So please don't put yourself through the pain of not planning out your builds and then needing to change stuff partway through, because it's not fun. It is really not fun. Secondly, adding a pop of colour like you can see on the roof behind me is really useful, and it's a big thing that lots of people are doing now in 2022. Colours and making sure that your builds stand out and aren't just boring like bricks, stone, woods is so important. You'll see more and more people involving colour into their builds, and it just looks so much better. I think it's so much more pleasing and interesting to look at, and it also just unlocks a whole new range of possibilities. Or even just like some colourful potted plants on the window or something like that, just to make your build the tiniest bit more interesting and add some more depth. Next, it is important that you go for details over size. So you can see I have this big wall here, and I mean, if we're thinking size wise, it would probably be a lot bigger if you're going for something like a mega base. Which, I mean, you can do mega bases detailed, but you have to do it right. Instead of doing something like that, you can grab a bunch of different blocks, anything you enjoy, and just go ham on the detailing. Add any detailing you physically can, because it will make your builds look so much cooler. For example, in the shake of my head, this wall will now be fully detailed. As you can see, just adding a few little details to this house made it so much better. I added a little tower, which obviously would continue up if I built the full thing. I added a little window and some random little bits coming off. I added a little trim around the outside and some hay bales and a hanging lantern. But this leads me straight on to my next point, which is add depth. Depth is the most useful thing in Minecraft builds. Instead of just building a flat wall like you've seen before, I have added little indented windows, a little tower coming out the side, just anything that you can do to add depth, and even the color depth with the little different blocks. That is useful. Anything that you can do to make your walls not look flat. We don't like them straight flat walls. Add a little bit of that gay depth. The fifth tip is about towers. As you can see, if I quickly extend this tower up a little bit, towers are a really useful way to add some more dimension to your Minecraft builds. So basically what I like to do is bring in some of those colours from the downstairs part of the house and just, you know, maybe add that pop of colour. A ridiculous roof. I honestly not sure how I feel about this, but that's what my brain went to instantly. Yeah, towers are a very good way of adding a little bit more shape and depth to your builds. Another bonus is you can pretend to be Rapunzel and let down your beautiful long luscious hair onto the citizens below. Tip 6. Spruce trapdoors. Needn't I say anymore? No, but seriously, spruce trapdoors are literally everything to a builder in Minecraft. You can do so much with them. You can make windowsills, add things to roofs, from shutters to bigger doors that are really fun to open. Spruce trapdoors are literally great for anything, and if you don't ever know what to add to your builds, just add spruce trapdoors. My next little tip is about interiors. Basically, you have a small room like this. Interiors can look a little boring, so my tips are the best thing to do is maybe add some shelves, get some flower pots and your favorite flowers, add them on. Barrels are your best friends. Barrels just look so much better than chests, so if you like them, definitely use them. You can add little lanterns in little gaps like this. Again, you can add flower pots. These little barricades are really useful for sectioning off the different areas of your builds. Obviously, you can put more barrels in here if you want them. But the little barricades just make your builds look so much more complete and compact. You can also add little beams across the ceiling. I don't know how good it will look in this one, but they work quite well, I would say. In most builds, at least. You can add lanterns hanging off of them and just add that little bit more light to your room. Fences are another little way you can add some depth. Cute little tables can also be added to your builds. They can serve a purpose. You'll put any of your little collectibles on here. Making sure not to put everything against the walls is also a good idea. Like bringing your bed off from against the wall. Carpets can also be used to help bring a little bit of colour into your room. Be careful that you don't create anything clashing, but they can be used in a really nice way if used properly. Tip 8 is adding shelves to your builds. Literally anywhere. These look good whatever you do with them. They just add a little bit more depth to your walls, and I really like them. Along with the hanging lanterns. Hanging lanterns can be their own tip. They won't just be used in the interior. You can hang them like this. You could hang them on the side of a little path if you wanted to, just to make your world a little bit brighter. Also, make sure that your builds aren't too symmetrical. Having unsymmetrical windows can sometimes just look so much better than having symmetrical windows. Like, I don't know why, but that just looks so much cooler to me than just everything being really symmetrical. Adding little farms to the side of your builds with scarecrows and walls around them help add that extra level of detail, especially if you make them formed to your natural surroundings, so you're not changing the terraforming of the land at all. Also, adding little paths up to your front door can be a cute little addition that, you know, I think people don't do it often enough. But you can also add blocks like gravel, sand and wood into the path to make them a little bit more complex if you wish. Adding custom trees is another cool way of adding some more depth to your worlds. With trees, I recommend doing a more sculpting rather than building type of way of going about it. So just go for it. Make it more natural. Like, sporadically place your wood. You don't need to have any kind of method to your madness. Just go for it. Just make it look cool. Branches, placing sporadically like this really helps. Adding fences into your trees can add a little bit more depth, as well as placing some slabs around to add more texture to your trees. And then with the leaves, you want to make sure you have a number of different leaves, and you can kind of gradient it with the light ones at the bottom and the darker ones near the top. Make sure your leaves hang down off your trees, as I would just think it looks so much nicer than having blocky random leaves everywhere. This is the kind of trees I tend to build. They look really cool, and I think adding little details to them just make them so much better, and the hanging leaves just make it look really cool.
Spruce trapdoors.
Tip 15 is any sort of interesting roof that you can do. Something a little bit more interesting than just a boring flat roof like this. They really add a lot to your builds, and I would recommend going to people like Grian and Scar's videos if you want to see some more interesting designs for roofs. I know Grian's starter based on Hermitcraft Season 9 has a really cool roof on it. Texturing! Adding different blocks like we can see here, and these little blocks in the walls just make things so much more interesting to look at and breaks it up a little bit from one constant block. It's a really important tip that has been around for a long time, but I really do recommend it. Even if we go over to our custom tree here, we can add some little stripped wood to it to make it just look even more textured. Our next one is landscaping. With the new updates in Minecraft, landscaping can sometimes be absolutely amazing, like in the big mountain biomes. But say you want this little mountain to look a little bit better, you might just add a little stone area into the side, make sure to texture that up a little bit, and add some overhanging dirt just to make it look even better. You can drip this down a little bit over the rest, and that usually completes the look of a nice little terraformed bit of a mountain or anything you want. For example, I built this out a little bit further, and I think that looks a little bit better than it did before. Tip 18 is to add some little rocks and bushes into the sides of your builds. Along with landscaping, these things can look really cool. I like adding little lanterns next to them to make them just stand out and pop a little bit. Number 19 is one you might have seen quite a lot in especially Grian videos if you watch them. Face windows. I don't know why, but face windows are always just the best type of windows. This one isn't quite as obvious as these buttons are quite discreet, but it still looks like a face and I'm happy with it. Hopper. This wonderful block is so useful. It was a great addition to Minecraft, and obviously it can be waxed, unwaxed. You could have it change colors randomly whilst you're building. And I also like that it comes in its blue and orange tones, as it adds more color options to the game. The next thing I have is gradients. Obviously you can do a lot with these. You can make them a lot thicker, you can maybe make them a little thinner, even though this is quite a thin gradient. You can use different color tones. This is just an example of a gradient that I really like to use in builds, and I think it looks really cool and adds some more color depth to your builds. You can do this with so many different things, different colors, different types of blocks. Those blocks over there could be used for gradients if you really wanted to, and they just add a lot to your builds. Tip 22 is mods. Whether you want mods that add cool different blocks into your games, or like World Edit, Replay Mod, and Schematica, which can be used by YouTubers to create much cooler videos if you want to time-lapse yourself building, or just use World Edit to speed things up. I don't really know how Schematica works, but I know if you want to make big builds, if you want it to look cool and build from bottom to top like a printer, it makes really good videos, and you won't be able to see the Schematica frame in your time-lapse if you use Replay Mod. It also tells you the exact amount of blocks that you need for each build, and I know lots of people use it. I've never used it before, but it sounds a lot of fun. But World Edit is a lot of use if you're building big things and creative, because you can add so much. You can make textures, you can make mountains. Here is a little sneak peek into a big project I've been working on for Pansy Survival Games recently, and we used a lot of World Edit for this. All these mountains were sculpted out of World Edit, and it just makes building big projects like this so much easier. Tip 23 is chimneys. I am notoriously not great at building these, but chimneys can add a little bit extra to your game. I think these are a fun little touch to add to your builds, as they do really make your building come alive and have little moving parts in them, which is very cool, although this does look very random just sitting on top of this little makeshift house here. Tip 24 is watch other people's videos and analyze everything they build. This is what I do to get all these tips for these videos. As you can probably tell if you look at my previous videos, I don't build much, especially not on camera. I do a little bit more of those things off camera and over on my Twitch, but I don't do that much building. Yeah, I still know all of these tips from watching people like Grian, Scar, SmallishBeans, Fwhips. There are just so many good people to watch that build a lot. I want to do more building content on my channel, but this is just the start. I don't know what building content you guys would like, but if you have any video suggestions, leave them in the comments down below. But yes, watching other people's videos is a really good way to get inspiration and to learn new building techniques. My next tip is to get your friends to critique your building skills. Your friends have a fresh point of view on the build, so they can see what works well and what doesn't. Let me call one of my friends, for example. Hufflepuff, I'm gonna share my screen with you. What do you think of this build?
Oh, that's cute. Aww, I really like that.
So Hufflepuff, what do you think of my build?
It's awful.
Oh. No. How dare you?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's just the truth. Like, it's not great. So, might want to work on that a bit if possible.
Is that any better?
So much better, honestly. Like, this is modern art. This is the peak of humanity. That is garbage. Okay, simply just don't tell people what my first response is to that.
No, I'm gonna keep that in. So after that absolutely disgraceful conversation with Hufflepuff,
How dare she? My next tip, tip 26, is to challenge yourself with where you build. You may think, planes, ooh, it's flat. Oh, this is nice. I can do a lot here because I don't have to remove anything. But actually, it's a little boring. It's a little bit of a boring area, and it's not challenging yourself enough. For example, you could use a swamp and build something into the lake. This is a very small swamp. But you could do something like that and live your full Godfather Jimmy life. Or you could find a giant mountain somewhere and build in the side of it. Another tip is make sure that your builds always have proper physics. So say you were building off the edge of this cliff here. You can make sure that your builds have proper physics by adding, say, little support beams going into the side of the mountain. Obviously Minecraft doesn't have physics, but just making your builds look a little bit more like they would actually work in real life can sometimes look a lot cooler than just slapping things together. On a related note, beams and supports do look really cool. I really like using them maybe on the outside of your builds if you want to do something like this and build a little beam up the side, if you want to do little cross beams in the middle, or like over there with little beam support structures. Like when I was talking about the tree, if you're doing any kind of realistic builds, like if you're trying to build a person, an animal, or even just a tree, anything kind of natural, you want to sculpt instead of build. I showed this when I was working on the tree, but basically making sure that you like work into it. So you place blocks and then you delete them. This just really gets you thinking, and it makes making natural forms so much easier, as you don't have to stick to what you originally have done. Make your building strange shapes. Don't just use the classic square. It's really boring, and honestly, it's very old Minecraft at this point in time. You can do that by adding things like towers onto the sides of your builds. Obviously, this is quite a rectangular build, but you could even do something circular. Like, challenge yourself. Do something that nobody does. Even building rooms individually sometimes can make your builds look really cool, because then you don't have one shape planned out and you can just go crazy with the shape of your builds. There's so many different ways to make doors. You can have single doors, you can have these cool doors which I showed you earlier, you can have double doors, you could just have archways with no actual doors in them, they're still doors. And you can also have the classic diagonal door if you're using some kind of diagonal build like this one. Make sure to take breaks when you're building. Coming back to a build with a fresh mind means that you won't get burnt out, and your builds will honestly look so much better. Make sure you're eating and drinking and staying well whilst you're building. Get some sleep and don't work too late into the night. If you are a survival builder, scaffolding is really useful. You can just spam on the bottom block and you can ride it all the way up and down, and you can land in it without taking full damage. Also, when you do eventually get to the top, if you just look down, you can place and it will build a path all the way out for you. Another cool thing that it can do is if you break the bottom block, it will all break. So you don't have to worry about breaking dirt. And yeah, it is quite expensive for the bamboo, but once you find bamboo, it grows really nicely and quickly. Our last and final tip is to make sure you have fun. Building is something that's a lot more fun and creative in Minecraft, and honestly, I think builders are much cooler people than PvPers, and it's absolute sweat. Make sure you have fun with your builds, do something out of your comfort zone every now and then, and make sure you're enjoying yourself. As long as you like your build, nobody else's opinions matter, and you don't have to use any of the tips I've shown you today. You could use all of them. I don't mind. So that is it for today's video, everyone. I hope you guys have enjoyed, and I hope you guys have learned some new building tips from this video. I've tried to include the most up-to-date things that will make your buildings very 2022. And that is it for today. I will see you all next week for another fun video.